Captain Kirk has always been my favorite Jedi.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Kaiju Weekly, the weekly podcast that introduces you to the wide world of giant monster movies. I am your host, Michael, your guy for Sentai, and I am joined by my very good friend, Danny Boy DiManna. How are you doing, good sir?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today, Michael?
I'm doing just fine. It seems like we're rehashing what me and Kim did last time, except you and I are doing the same accent.
It's deja vu all over again, man.
I totally agree.
Yeah,
I
you're right.
totally agree. And before I start offending all of our UK listeners, I probably should stop.
You probably should, but will you?
I don't know.
You don't know.
That's a bonny good question if you ask me.
Right.
Anyway,
We got it. All right. Are we back? I think we did it.
I don't know. Wait, hang on.
Nope. One more try.
Okay, I think I'm back.
Hey,
okay.
There's the accent we know and love.
Hey, there we go.
He's back. I
back.
have that effect on people. And when I say people, I mean you when we re-record.
We spend 15 minutes just going back and forth that in a accent session that will never probably make this podcast, but
yeah.
I'm sorry, audio listener. I wish we didn't have to cancel our Patreon, but you know, you would have gotten some quality material. I gotta stop.
This will be it'll be the rest of the recording if we don't reel ourselves in.
Yeah, exactly. So Danny boy, how are you? And for anyone in the ether that does not know who you are, please introduce yourself to our faithful Kaiju Weekly listener.
Well, I'd be glad to. No more voices. Got to be good.
Whoa!
Hey, there it is.
That was getting dangerous. That was making my pants a little tight.
What?
There.
Okay. What part of your pant? Never mind. So, wow.
My belt.
Travis, if you're listening, I'm sorry. We love you, man. My name is Daniel DiManna, and I am the creator and author of the Godzilla Novelization Project, a very long form, very kind of out of my mind crazy writing project that I am coming up on having done for 4 years, which is insane to my brain.
Holy
yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I'll bleep that out.
Yeah, you'd have to bleep that out. But yeah, 4 years in February, late February, it'll be 4 years. And for anybody who doesn't know, the GNP for short is a project that is aiming to create full English language novelizations of the entire Japanese Godzilla series and share the resulting books 100% free with fans who would like to read them. It is it's operating on the please don't sue me fan fiction principle, where I'm not I have a Patreon, but I'm not charging for the books because I wouldn't, but also I can't for reasons, because I don't like C&Ds being stuffed into my mailbox, and I like Toho.
Yeah.
You know,
well, I mean, we all love Toho. We owe them a lot. We owe them a lot. We owe them many thanks, many thanks. And we have heard that their lawyers can be quite
persnickety, shall we say?
Persnickety.
Yes,
quite.
Yes. Which is a great name for a cat, by the way. Next cat I get, I'm naming him Persnickety.
I don't know. I already have 2. I don't know if I ever. I have 2. Julie has 4.
Ooh.
So
this is a yours, mine, and ours situation when you end up combining cat families.
Oh yeah, I don't want to think about that now. But anyway, so Danny, thank you for coming on this podcast in such short notice, because if anyone who doesn't know, Travis had to be on a little bit of a hiatus to deal with something much more important than this podcast and much more important than kaiju in general. And I'm not being facetious when I say that, but I'm sure that Travis will be back very, very soon. But Travis does send his regards to all of our faithful listeners. I know he misses y'all, but he did need a little bit of time off to deal with some family stuff. So we wish him well.
Absolutely. Travis, if you're listening, my man, take care. I can't wait to see it back on the show, but don't feel bad. Take time. Take time. Time is
Yeah.
important. So we're
Yeah, we
yeah,
got
we got
this.
this
Yeah.
covered. Low stress, low pressure. My heart goes out to you, man.
It may be a little bit chaotic. I dare I say the podcast will never be the same after however long I have to co-host by myself, but it is the price we pay.
It
Anyway,
is.
so before we get started, I do have to do a little bit of housekeeping and read a couple of Apple podcast reviews, because we always talk about how we want people to send us reviews. You don't have to write us a review, but it's nice when you do. You can just send us a rating, because we want to get we're at currently a 3.8, and I know 100% this show is better than a 3.8. So if you're listening and you want to just throw us a rating, you don't have to write a review like the fine people that I'm about to read from. If you want to throw us a rating, by all means, please do that. But if you do want to write us a review, we will read that on a future episode, just like I'm about ready to do for Mr. BT McClure, which is our friend Brandon at the Fake Nerds podcast. He leaves a 5-star review. The title of his review is titled "One of the Best," and a review reads such as this: one of the best kaiju podcasts out there. The hosts have great chemistry and they know their stuff. What more could you honestly want from a show? Well, thank you, Brandon, for those kind words. We really appreciate you and everything that you guys are doing over at the Fake Nerds podcast. I actually have another review, because we did get a slew of reviews
Nice.
in the last couple of months. And this one comes in from username Random Reviewer 22. The title of the review is "A Great Monsters Podcast." It's 5 stars, and the review reads like this: knowledgeable, fun, engaging. Everything you could ask a niche podcast to have. This has in spades. Thank you so much, Random Reviewer 22, for those kind words. And if you want to be awesome like these two wonderful people, you can submit a 5-star review or just a rating to us on Apple Podcasts, and we would deeply appreciate it. So,
Absolutely.
Danny, we have a little bit of news. We were going to be newsless in this episode up until probably 2 or 3 days ago
Uh-huh.
when something happened. So, Danny, do you know what we have to queue up?
Oh, yes, I do. And I'm excited to get to the news on this one. This is awesome stuff. Let's not waste any more time. Cue that beady beady.
Cue the beady beady. So the first little bit of news is a little bit selfish. I'm sorry, guys, but at the time of this episode is being published, you guys have 5 more days. That's all. That's 5. That's all. Like, that's less than 6.
It's the number of
And definitely
fingers.
less than.
The number of fingers
It's
on the
the
average human hand. It's not a lot.
on the yes on yeah. I mean, if you have more than 5 fingers, more power to you. We love you anyway, but 5 fingers, 5 days to go and support Kaiju Ramen Volume 1 on Kickstarter. It's a fantastic little book that we're putting together that compiles all of the issues of Kaiju Ramen thus far. It will serve as the director's cut for what the magazine has been this entire year, and we have the support of some wonderful people within this fandom, veterans like Kyle Yount, who will be writing our forward, and the legendary Matt Frank, who has done the cover for us already. And we've already shown that off. It's gorgeous. It's fantastic. It's wonderful. And I want to add that it's a Kickstarter only. So if you don't back us on Kickstarter, you're going to just miss out. I'm sorry, because we won't be reprinting this book again, because we want to do something very, very special for our faithful listeners and for our faithful readers that have supported Kaiju Ramen this entire year. And because we love you guys. And so again, you have 5 days to go support Kaiju Ramen Volume 1. After February the 1st, it is gone over. Kaputsky? Is that it?
Kaputsky.
Kaputsky. Anyway,
Kaput.
it is. You will not be able to have it ever again, because we're not going to do reprints. So anyway,
Yes.
but here's the pitch, though, guys. Come on, and this is my ultimate pitch for Kaiju Ramen Volume 1, because by the time this will most likely be the last episode that comes out before the Kickstarter closes. And my final pitch for Kaiju Ramen Volume 1: if you want to support independent artists, independent writers, or just independent creators in general, and you care about that kind of stuff, and you also care about kaiju, please go support Kaiju Ramen Volume 1 on Kickstarter. Go send us some money. Every little bit counts. I promise it's going to go to a good cause. We will steward that money the best we possibly can to make the best product we possibly can. And we've got some really fun stuff coming up in issue 5 as well. So please, if you can, if you have the cash, please go support us on go support the Kaiju Ramen Volume 1 on Kickstarter and don't miss out.
Don't miss out. This is it. This is the end. This is the last few days. I mean, just as a, now I've worked on the magazine. I've contributed a short story, a couple of articles. I edited a few of the issues,
A little bit, yeah.
but if, so I've been there, but you guys, just from the perspective of somebody who's, stepping away from me having contributed, but just as a reader and somebody who loves kaiju and loves all the things you just mentioned, just as an observer of what you and Travis have done, I am just completely blown away by this thing. This magazine has been a highlight of my life the last year plus, just again as an outside observer and somebody who's been lucky enough to take part in it a little bit. But this volume 1 is like, I'm so jazzed. I'm excited to get my copy, and I'm really excited for all the people who didn't get physical copies of the first few issues to get this thing. It's going to be cool. Also, we can't move on until you mentioned that there's currently a little art contest going on as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Danny, for reminding me of that. So basically, if you are a kaiju artist, if you fancy yourself a kaiju artist in any way, shape, or form, whether that be photography, illustration, graphic design, digital design, whatever design, if you want to do a finger painting or something of Godzilla, I don't really care. And you want to submit that to us to show off in the magazine, the only way that happens is if we reach our goal of $9,000 for the Kickstarter, and we are so close.
We're so close. If anybody out there, if everybody out there, here's a crazy idea. If everyone out there who has backed the Kickstarter already, 150, I think 4 or 5 people, if every one of those people bumped up their pledge by $1, I'm pretty sure we'd hit $9,000, right? I think that would be it.
We absolutely would. As of the time of this recording, and through the magic of Google, I'm going to pull up our current number as of right now.
Insert dramatic drum roll. I like how you actually drummed and I just made a sound that sounded like drumming. Wow.
We are currently at $8,878.
Oh, that's so close.
It's so close. So if anyone out there listening, if you have already backed, if you could throw another like $2 our way, which is, I know, sometimes $2 is hard for people to come up with. We realize that times are tough, but if you can afford it and you want to throw us a little bit of cash to help support us and get this up to 9,000, and you also want to help us support independent artists by featuring them in the magazine. I mean, I can't think of a better way to spend $2. I mean, you can't even buy a cup of coffee for $2 unless you go to some really awful gas station.
Unless you want very bad coffee.
Unless you want very bad office coffee, because I've had very bad office coffee.
Oh yeah,
where they charge you $1 to get the coffee, or actually very bad hospital coffee. Like when my parents were in the hospital, they charge you $1 for the coffee, and it was awful. It was like it was like drinking tar. Anyway. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is, if you guys could just spot us a couple bucks, we will easily crush our goal, and then we'll be able to feature artists in the volumized issue of our magazine. But we just wanted to do this because we want to, in 2022, we want to put a lot of emphasis on artists. And I know there's been a lot of talk within the Godzilla community, the kaiju community as a whole, actually, about, artists and things, and just really trying to put a focus on artists and really loving on them, and just even artists outside of the, I guess, what we would consider like the big four artists that get all the notoriety. We want art submissions and photo submissions, any submission from you guys, those independent small artists that are just trying to get your work out there. Please send that to us at Kaiju Ramen Magazine at gmail.com. And the only caveat is it has to be ramen related. So it can be Godzilla eating ramen, Gamera eating ramen. It could be you taking a photo of one of your toys next to a ramen bowl. As long as there's ramen in it, it will go in the magazine. Now, I will say this, and because I was talking with Travis. Excuse me. I was talking with Travis earlier today, and he's like, "Well, maybe we should put a restriction as like no nudity." Um, so no nudity, guys.
No,
That's
family
really
friendly. Family friendly.
family friendly. So no nudity. We really appreciate that. We want to make this as accessible as it can be for fans of every age. And although I love like tasteful nude art, and I hope that doesn't sound creepy,
Tread
but
carefully, Michael.
I know. I wanted to emphasize tasteful.
Tasteful.
Um, Tasteful. Like I love photography. I love tasteful photography. Um, but we want to, like, again, we want to keep this as family friendly as possible. So if you want to send your art submission to kaijuramamagazine@gmail.com to be featured in the magazine, we would really appreciate that. And it would definitely be your time and your effort and your love would definitely be going to a good cause. A link to the Kickstarter will be posted in the description of this episode. So as soon as you hear this blurb, as soon as you hear me talk about it, go support it and then come back to this episode and then finish our conversation. So that's it about Kaiju Ramen Magazine. I hope I pitched it the best I could in the closing days of this campaign,
I
Danny.
think you did a good job. I think you sold it. I think you sold it well. And one other thing before we move on, my gosh, Michael, you have been on every single podcast and streaming kaiju related streaming show ever in the last couple of weeks. You have got to be exhausted. You're gonna sleep for a week after this Kickstarter is over.
Well, I tell you what, I will I probably won't sleep much until this book is in the hands of people. I probably won't sleep, and I probably won't even sleep until after that because I'm still going to be worried that it was good enough, even after that. But at some point, you're right. I'm going to have to sleep, but I will say that if you guys are listening, I want to send a huge shout out of gratitude to the guys from Collect All Monsters, David, Leslie, Kyle, Christine, and John of that show. Fantastic crew of people. Kaiju Live with AJ Russo and Matt Frank. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come on and talk about the magazine. Of course, Matt Burkett of Monstrosities, a Tokusatsu vlog. Thank you so much, man, for that. And Kaiju Kim, how can I forget about Kaiju Kim? She was the very first person that let us come on and talk about this project. So we owe her a lot. She's a dear friend of ours. The fine people over at Phaser Media for doing that written interview with us. And also Sci-Fi Japan, that crew over there, Jack and Chris. Thank you so much for doing that interview with me and Travis. I hope I'm not forgetting somebody. Let's see. Kaiju Live, Collect All Monsters, Kim. Nope, I did. You're right. I did.
I think
No.
you got pretty much everyone, but I've watched all of those interviews and streams. I've read all of that, and I was tired after after that. I can only imagine, dude. I mean, it's fun. It's really cool. I mean, you got to be like the fact that you get to hang out with these guys and do all this cool stuff. I genuinely hope that you and Travis are proud of yourselves because you deserve it.
Oh no, we're very proud of the work we've done, and it's not and it's not in a boastful
No, of
way
course not.
either.
Of course not.
We're extremely proud of the work we've done, or else we wouldn't be doing this at all. But every interview that I have done in the past month has been extremely helpful to the Kickstarter. Has been a wonderful experience. I think I talked about. I talked about with you and a few others how nervous I was on the collect all monsters because it's Kyle Yount and crew. I mean, come on, guys,
Yeah.
you guys would be nervous too
I'd have been
because
pooping bricks too. Let me tell you.
yeah, because Kyle is a wonderful human. All those people at Collect All Monsters are wonderful human beings, but it's Kyle Yount, and he's a little, and as soon as you say something that's incorrect, he's going to correct you. And that's I hope I'm getting my facts straight. Holy crap. Did I say something wrong? But no, Kyle and that crew was fantastic. They were extremely, extremely helpful, very cordial, and we cannot thank them enough for letting me come on and talk about this project. And everyone else, of course. I think my most fun interview that I've had so far leading up to this Kickstarter and participating in this Kickstarter has actually been the one I did on monstrosities
Oh
with
yeah.
Matt, because Matt is a wonderful host. He's a wealth of knowledge about this genre, and we bonded over Grape Juice Plus, and so that he will always hold a special place in my heart for us bonding over Planet of the Apes and Grape Juice Plus.
Absolutely. And you know what? Full disclosure, I was gonna try to work in a grape juice plus joke in this very episode of Kaiju Weekly before you. I thought I could do it before you got to it, but I couldn't. You got to it before me. I failed. But no, the all joking aside, that monstrosities stream was just great. Matt is Matt, I love that guy. I love that guy.
Yeah,
He
Matt's fantastic.
upstanding gentleman, like you said, very very smart. Monstrosities in general is just a anybody who likes giant monsters and is looking for good video content on YouTube. Matt does some of, if not the best, on YouTube. He's up there. I mean, the stuff that he does is just absolutely amazing. So,
Oh, his Singular Point series has
oh,
been so
oh, it's so
so
good.
good.
It's so good. Anybody out there who has not watched the lost and unmade history of Singular Point and all of his Singular Point stuff, oh my gosh, go watch it. You will learn so much. What a wealth of knowledge. I love that there are people in the fandom that are digging that deep and then sharing that information with people, because I eat that information up like Tic Tacs. I
Oh yeah, I
love
mean,
it.
I was talking with somebody the other day. I wish that we weren't in. I wish that Travis and I were not in such a hurry to publish our Singular Point episode, and we would have taken our time to really kind of research it. Like Matt's show would have been a super helpful resource
Oh yeah.
in helping with that discussion. I'm still happy with the discussion we had. I just wish that there were resources like Matt out there before we started recording, and we didn't rush too far into it. But again, it was a lot of fun, that episode. And Matt was as always a gentleman. He is a gentleman and a scholar.
Literally,
Um,
yes.
Yes, quite right.
Yes,
Anyway,
yes.
we're not
Nope,
going
nope,
there.
nope. Kibosh.
Anyway, moving on. Thank you so much, guys, for all of you who have supported Kaiju Ramen magazine so far. It has been such a fun ride, and we look forward to producing more fun content for you guys in 2022. But Danny, we
Yes.
have some other news. So
Yes.
apparently, to the chagrin of many people within this fandom, it seems as though the Monsterverse is not dead.
The Monsterverse is dead. All hail the Monsterverse. Oh wait, it's not dead. It's super
No,
not
it's not
dead.
dead.
It was never
Nope.
dead.
It was never dead to begin with. I don't think I was ever one of those people. At least I don't think so. At least I
No.
don't think so.
I mean, we all
I
had
don't
our work. I think we were all a little concerned for people who were into the MonsterVerse. I think there were a few moments where all of us were a little bit like, "Oh, is this it? Is this it? Is this the end?"
I mean,
You know?
it kind of felt like it was it.
Yeah.
After Godzilla versus Kong, it kind of felt like that. And that
Yes.
was what was really concerning to me. But as I said on that episode, when we talked about Godzilla versus Kong, because I think Travis asked me this, if Godzilla versus Kong was the very last thing that we got from the Monsterverse, I was happy, because it left with its mission, I believe, fulfilled. Which I think the ultimate goal of the Monsterverse is to entertain and to tell an interesting story from the perspective of characters that we all have grown up with and we all know and love. And um, so yeah, I think the Monsterverse has accomplished that goal.
Absolutely.
But a little internet leak or a little internet story popped up this past week about it. It seems that a series that will be popping up soon on Apple TV Plus. No date as to when it will happen. As far as I know, it is in production now currently. Just no information is available on who's going to be cast, when it's going to be released, or how much actual Godzilla we will get in the show. So, Danny, I want to ask you. I know you've done a lot of research. You've probably read a ton of articles on this. What are your impressions and what are your thoughts on this television show that's coming?
I am pumped. I am pumped. Now, for me in my head, I mean, we all love the like going, seeing Godzilla in theaters, in a movie, in a
Sure,
feature film.
sure,
But for me, for my money, the more I thought about it, especially over the last year and how the entertainment landscape has really altered and shifted, it really made sense to me that the future of the MonsterVerse would be in television. And by television I mean streaming. And it was because we already have a Kong anime that's been confirmed
sure.
at Netflix.
Right. Yes.
And there's a lot to unpack vis-a-vis Apple TV Plus being the home and not, HBO Max, but there's a bunch of politicking in there that I'm not interested in talking about, especially when there's a
Sure.
new Godzilla show coming out, and that's what I'm focusing on. I don't really care where it streams. I'm not the world's biggest streaming person, but
I'm with you. Yeah.
I'm a physical media guy, I'm a physical media
Right.
guy, but if my this is one of those things where when Godzilla versus Kong came out, the internet was Team Godzilla, Team Kong, because that's what the marketing team wanted everyone to do. And it was fun. But I kept saying, I'm team successful movie.
Hmm.
I'm team
Yeah.
successful movie. I braved braved the elements in early 2021 and went to the theater to go see it. I actually rented out the screen for myself so I didn't have to worry about sick people breathing on me. but
Oh, okay. I actually did not know that. No.
Yes, that was a. I have. I don't. It feels like bragging when I talk about it, so I don't talk about it much. But I saved up my money, and it wasn't that expensive. But I don't know if this is everywhere else, but at most Cinemark theaters, you can rent out a screen for like a party,
Sure.
something like that. So I rented a theater out and went by myself and went to go. And well, I did. Well, my girlfriend went with me. She ended up.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say you left her at home.
No, she was working that night originally, and so I figured I'd be going myself. But then she texts me and says, "Hey, I'm off. Can I come see this movie with you?" And I said, "Yes." So we went and saw the movie together, and I left. I wanted it to get my money, and that's the moral of the story. Is I wanted the movie to get my money so that I could support it, and I could have that ticket in my hand that said, "Yes, I helped the MonsterVerse in a small way by
Mhm.
contributing to the box office," which ended up being a pretty big, impressive, and now historic box office for the era.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about this series. I am excited. I have no real wants or desires going into this thing. I'm just excited to see what they do with it. And even though I mean, I have like a streaming service. I have Netflix and I mooch HBO Max off of a family member. That's all I have.
Shame on you.
I know. They offered. It was a thing. It was. I didn't steal it. It was offered to me, but I do.
It's okay.
But
It's okay. I canceled my HBO Max subscription and I mooch it off of Julie.
nice. It's a good perk, it's
Uh,
but yeah, I will do the and again, I'm hearing everywhere that people are complaining because Apple TV Plus is apparently super expensive, $20 a month. It's $5 a month, guys. And unless you want to up, I think the $20 is 4K. If you want to stream it in 4K. I think that's right.
So I had to look it up, and because I was actually curious myself, because I kept seeing people complain about how expensive Apple TV Plus was, and I was like, I'm only paying $5 from what I know. Like because I had to look, I had to update my billing the other day, and I could have swore I remember seeing that thing only be like $5. So I had to look it up, and I think what people are freaking out about, at least what I've seen online, is when you go in and sign up for what they call their Apple One plan, which is their all encompassing plan, which is music, Apple TV Plus, Apple Arcade, Apple iCloud, Apple News Plus, Apple Fitness Plus, and all that stuff. That is their Apple One. So I think what people were freaking out about was uh the family plan under Apple One, which does cost $20, is $19.95 a month, and it gives you Apple Music, Apple TV Plus, Apple Arcade, and iCloud storage. Now, if you just want Apple TV Plus, it's $4.99. It's $5 plus probably a little bit of tax, so you're going to pay, I don't know, like maybe around $6 or something like that, which is still cheaper than Netflix because Netflix just raised their price because you have to pay. Now you have to pay extra if you want 4K streaming material, whereas they would just bundle the 4K stuff in as just into your plan. So I remember after I had to switch some stuff around about a year ago and open up my own accounts and whatnot, I remember signing up for Netflix just under my own individual plan and having to pay much more than I remember paying as a like a family plan member or something like that. So yeah, like all things considered, if you just want Apple TV Plus, that's all you want. You just want the streaming service. It's $5, guys. It's $5 plus a little bit of tax. So you're going to be paying.
It's
I don't know. I can't.
$60 minus to tax. It's $60 a year, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Something
So
like
you're
that. Yeah. So
so
it's.
what you're telling me is that the internet misunderstood something and blew it out of proportion and made a big deal
Eh,
about it? That
no, the internet
seems
wouldn't do it.
fake.
The internet wouldn't do that,
That
David.
doesn't
You know
seem
that.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. It doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem logical. I don't know.
No,
It's a
no.
mystery. It's a
Yeah,
mystery.
totally. Totally. So, I mean, it's five. If you just want if you just want the streaming plan, it's $5. Anyway, so I don't want to get into that mess, but I do want to highlight that it is interesting that they are going with Apple TV Plus and not something like HBO Max, which already has the MonsterVerse stuff on it. They just put King of the Monsters back on HBO Max. So I'm curious what the deal is. They're moving it over to Apple TV. So maybe I'm assuming Apple just gave them a better deal, or they were just shopping it, or they were basically probably shopping the series around, and whoever gave them the best deal is who got it. So I'm assuming maybe Warner Brothers and Legendary isn't necessarily beholden to HBO and all that. So I don't know. I don't know how streaming services and those types of things befuddle me because I don't understand all of it.
Yeah, it's a confusing mess of rights and stuff. So what I've been able to gather from all of the articles that I read, I probably read like 6 articles the day that it dropped, and most of it was the same information regurgitated.
Yeah,
But a couple of them did make note of the fact that Legendary did shop the series around, and Apple TV Plus was the one that took notice, and I apparently
sure.
made the best offer. Now, why that's a thing is because even though Warner Brothers is the distributor for the MonsterVerse films, they don't own the rights. That's
Mhm,
all at Legendary. So Legendary
sure.
can technically take their MonsterVerse things and there might be a different clause when it comes to movies versus television, but basically the assumption I'm making here based on the facts is that when it comes to TV, they can shop the MonsterVerse around any darn place they want, which is why
Right.
Netflix is getting an original Kong anime and not HBO
Mm,
Max. And now there's
right.
another service that's getting it. So we might be heading into a world where there are MonsterVerse streaming shows all the heck over the place, and as long as Disney Plus doesn't get their hands on it, I'll be fine. But the Disney and Godzilla, I enjoy Disney, love me some Godzilla, but the thought of them getting close together in the legal department freaks me out a little bit.
Oh yeah, one. I think there was a I think there was like one of those silly Twitter poll question things, and they said, what's the one nightmare scenario for a Godzilla fan?"
I
And
saw
I think
this.
I wrote, if that Disney gets the right to that Disney or Marvel gets the rights to Godzilla.
Two
I'm
words.
like,
Two words. The horror.
the horror, like, because
Yes.
like Disney's a fine company. I like what they've done with some of the Marvel series that they
Yeah.
have, and I like what they've done with the Star Wars stuff. I just kind of want them to keep their greedy little mitts off of my giant lizard.
Take your
Which,
stinking paws off me. There's the apes
take
reference.
your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty streaming service. I just think it's a curious thing that they got picked up by Apple
It
TV
is.
Plus because I did not. I just did not see that coming at
No,
all.
and that's the thing about this news is it's very unexpected and it's
Mhm.
very out of
Divisive.
yeah, there's a lot of people that are not happy for various reasons. They don't like Apple TV Plus. A lot of people are just very upset at Warner Brothers and HBO Max right now, and that's bleeding into it. And then there's a whole subset of fans who are, and to each their own. They're not fans of the MonsterVerse, so they're
Mm,
just. But there's a difference in my brain between not being excited for something, which is fine, and then telling other people they shouldn't be excited for it, which is not fine. So if
that's silly.
that's silly. I mean, I know people who don't like the MonsterVerse, which is fine. You don't have to like it if you don't want to, but they're
No,
actively poo-pooing fans who are excited about this thing. So don't
yeah,
don't do that. Be nice. Play
yeah,
play nice internet. Play nice, but
yeah.
you don't have to be excited about it, but don't you know, don't mess rain on somebody else's parade. That's what I'm trying to say. But for my
Asking the internet to play nice is like asking a lion
they're
not to eat
they're
meat.
not going to listen to me. I know it's I'm just throwing it out into the
Right.
ether. But I mean, long story short, we you and I think are both on the same page with this. We are curious. We are a little bit shocked that this is a thing that's happening, but I think overall, at least for my sake, for my money, I'm happy. I'm excited
Yeah.
because again, who knows how much is what the budget on this thing is going to be? Who knows how much kaiju action is going to be in it or how much Godzilla is going to be in it? I don't care. Particularly, I loved Singular Point, and Godzilla is
Mhm.
mostly weighed in at the end of the show, and that doesn't bother me. I didn't even think about it until other fans said that it bothered them. So, not a concern for me. They could build up to him for 12 episodes, and then he's only in the 13th. And as long as I enjoyed the previous 12 episodes, then
Sure.
I don't have a problem. I have no reason, none, to be skeptical at the moment. I'm just very excited.
Yeah, this might actually give because one of the biggest complaints about Godzilla, this is about Godzilla versus Kong specifically, was the lack of backstory or character growth with our human protagonists. Now, people that love that kind of stuff, and you and I are included
Hmm.
in that camp. It's a lot easier and more effective to do it in a serialized television show than trying to cram all of that character development into a 90 to 2 hour long movie.
Oh yeah,
And I think that I'm hoping that this series surprises a lot of people of how good it is. I think that I just think I think a lot of people are mad because it's Apple TV, and a lot of folks, maybe just you have a lot of folks that just don't like the Apple brand, period,
that's a
and
good
that's why
point.
they're upset.
That's a good point.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in that, like, there's a lot more to take into consideration um other than just, the Monsterverse or not or no Monsterverse. There's a lot of people out there that just hate the Apple brand, period. But I think that because Apple TV is kind of this, I don't know, this newish thing. There's not a ton. I was looking on Apple TV earlier, and there's not a ton of content on there. It's still a fairly new platform, but everything that I have personally seen on Apple TV has been high quality. So I don't have any reason to doubt that they're not going to do a good job with this. Um, but of course, it's the internet, and people are going to find some reason to complain about, which is fine. That's their prerogative. But I'm like you, Danny. I'm just going to embrace it for what it is and hope that it's good. And I think it will
Yeah,
be.
more Godzilla is always an exciting time, at least for some people. I I
And
think.
pe- and see, here's the thing too. Um, this is something I was thinking about, and we'll move on from this after I make this point. Um, there are so many Apple users that putting Godzilla in front of them as sort of a thing that they promote, like, I can see, a keynote like a year from now, and whomever is at the helm of Apple gets on stage. They talk about Apple TV Plus, and a big splash screen of Monarch or the Monsterverse comes up on screen, and that's brand awareness, that's franchise awareness, and that just opens the door for more new Godzilla fans to be indoctrinated into this genre and this franchise we all love.
and again, it really is all about just, spreading the love. I mean, at the end of the day, no matter what fan A, fan B, or fan Z thinks of a certain Godzilla property, that Godzilla property created a new fan somewhere.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah, for sure.
that's, nothing else to say on that front. I'm
Yeah.
excited, and bring it on. Bring it on. More Monsterverse. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, that does it for our news. I know we were a little light on news, but not light on conversation because there was a good amount to talk about with that news story there, and so I'm excited. But Danny, we got to move into our main topic this week, and it's going to be a good one.
Yes, it is. I'm excited.
Yeah. So each and every week, we like to ask a trivia question that leads into our main topic. And this week, our main topic's trivia question reads like this. A gymnastic maneuver used during the 1964 Summer Olympics in Tokyo called the Ultra C helped inspire the name of this 1966 Kaiju TV series. And we got a few answers. And Danny, if you'll indulge me just for a second, if you want to help me read these, I'll do one, and then you'll do one. We'll go back and forth, just to get you to participate a little bit more in this episode. So
Yep.
we did get some answers from our friends on the social medias. Our first answer comes from our friend Elijah at ET13 Productions, and
Oh my gosh.
the joke will never die.
No,
The joke that will never die. Ultra nipple Yeti questions.
I'm not even sure
The,
what that means, Elijah. Like, what does
I
that even
I
mean,
think
man?
he probably wrote that at 4 o'clock in the morning after doing a bender of whatever tokusatsu show that he has been indulging in
On VHS, most likely.
on on
A
VHS,
man
most likely.
after my own heart, truly.
Mhm.
A man who
Yes.
stays up late watching tokusatsu on VHS tape. He's kind of a smaller, grouchier version of me, I think.
Ha!
We love you, Elijah. I'm just teasing you.
Yes, of course.
Yes, yes. All right. So I guess I'm next here. Let's see what the one and only Travis Alexander of this very podcast, but not this time, had to say. Ultra Quinn Medicine Woman.
That's a good one.
Ultra Q Win. I got to read it like how he wrote it. Ultra Q
Right.
Win Medicine. Travis, that's really
She
good.
be
That's good.
so she be queuing.
She be
And that's
queuing.
that and that slang for barbecue. I think it's slang for
I
barbecuing,
hope
right?
because it's either that or something. I feel like I should always know what slang means before I start saying it. You know,
Yeah.
it's a good practice to get into. But I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say barbecue. I think that makes
Okay.
sense.
Okay, that makes sense to me. So the next answer comes from our friend and friend of the podcast, Kaiju Hime Destiny, and she wrote parallel barodons.
Ooh.
I'm wonder. I read this earlier, and I'm not 100% sure if I understand it. I'm sorry. Um.
Well, I think I can figure. I have a theory. I have a theory
Okay,
because I
you
think
have a
I
theory.
think what we're looking at is supposed to and Kaiju Hime. If this is wrong, I apologize. You're awesome. I'm not trying to be not trying to poke at you. I promise. But I think what we're looking at is supposed to read parallel baragons because there are
Mm.
multiple instances of the Baragon suit being used for different kaiju across Ultra Q and Ultraman.
Oh yeah. So autocorrect probably messed this one
I
up.
think Kaiju Hime might have been betrayed by autocorrect, the greatest villain of our times. Truly,
I think so.
autocorrect.
I think so. I think so. So Destiny, we're just going to assume that was your answer because it's a brilliant answer and we like it more than parallel baradons. So anyway, our next
No, what are you
Danny, I'm
doing? What
sorry.
are you doing?
I about
Shoo,
took your spot. I'm so sorry.
shoo.
You
No,
go
no, get
next.
out of here. Get out of here. Yeah, hey.
Yeah.
This is Kaiju Kim's. This one comes to us from Kaiju Kim, and she was nice enough to read it in an accent. The last one because she read the one I wrote in an accent, so I'm going to read it back for her in an accent to return the favor. Because honestly, when I heard that, it made me day. It was awesome. So Kaiju Kim wrote. This is her answer. The Twilight Zone. The Twilight Zone. Not correct, but We love you anyway, Kaiju Kim. We love you dearly. You're great. That's a great answer. Truly. I'm done now.
I
I'm
mean,
back.
it's not
It's almost the right
she's not
answer.
she's not far off. She's
And
not
let's
far
and
off.
let's be
We'll
honest.
say
She knows the answer. She knows the answer.
she
She knows
does.
the answer.
She's a smart
Oh
cookie.
yeah.
She knows the answer. She does. So the next answer comes in from our friend in Germany, Mr. Chris Degel,
Ooh.
and he writes Godzilla versus the sea monster.
The letter C, ultra as in Ultra C. The letter C monster. I saw that in the
Mhm.
comments right before I started recording a few hours ago, and I got I laughed unreasonably hard at that because of how clever it was. That's a great answer. All
I
right.
just want to hear. I want to hear him. I want to hear him. I want to hear him say that in his German
His
accent because I just think that would be even
You know
better.
what? Actually, I wonder if he could answer some questions I might have about the German version of the actual Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, because I'm pretty sure that's one of the movies where they changed the title to like Frankenstein versus something crazy.
That's everything from
That's
Germany that
true. I
they've
have
changed
to
the title.
narrow it down. Have to narrow it down.
Yeah,
Hey, guess what?
yeah.
The next one comes to us from the Hendshine Men. I don't know what that is. I'm just kidding. Henshin Med Podcast. The Henshin Med Podcast. And the answer is Ultraman. I know it's wrong, but gotta represent. And
I mean,
I guess, I mean, it is the Common Writer podcast, so I mean, I don't know what you're representing, but that's fine.
yeah, it's totally the Common Writer
It is.
podcast. That's all they talk about is Common
Yeah,
Writer.
I mean, there's a lot of Common Writer to talk about, so I can't really blame them, but
It's
it's the
true.
Common Writer.
There's a like the first season has like 90 some episodes,
Oh
so
yeah,
they have to.
it's out of control. There's so much,
It
there's so
is.
just that first season. All right, what's the next one?
It's ridiculous. Jimmy from Nasada
Ooh,
writes in parentheses war in space giants.
you would write that, Jimmy. You would write that.
Mhm.
I get it. I get it. I see. Space
Are we
giants. I get
sure?
it.
Are we sure that Jimmy is a real person? By the way,
I have never been convinced, personally. I have my suspicions that the account is actually being run by some crazy Hoosier in Indiana, but I don't have proof. I'm gonna have to
okay.
like do some Google like tracing to figure it out. But I have my suspicions that Jimmy might be a pseudonym and not a real
Mhm.
person based on a fictitious character from a late 1970s Toho movie. But I'm not sure. All right, what's next here? This is
Oh, you
this is
know
me.
who's
I
next.
I do, but I was trying to avoid it. But I guess there's really no.
Okay.
Okay, just gotta bear with it. MIFV, whatever the heck that stands for, writes in and says Ultra Pie. Ultra Pie.
What flavor of pie though?
Hmm. Apple. Definitely apple.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I actually prefer
I
cherry.
prefer cherry too. I was trying my brain, okay, full disclosure, my brain was trying to make a chicken run reference and I was about to say chicken pies. Chicken
Ha!
pies. Please, okay, I hope somebody out there has I can't be the only person who loves Chicken Run, right? Come on. Come on.
I haven't seen that movie in a number of years,
I
so I.
recommend you rewatch it. It is phenomenal. It is so good
Oh,
and there are chicken pies in it and I'm not making I'm not insane. Despite the evidence to the contrary, I am not insane. I am making a reference to a chicken movie. Go watch it. It's good.
okay. All right. Good to know. Well, thank you, MIFV, whatever that stands for your answer. We appreciate that. But it is not the correct answer. That distinction belongs to our friends Atomic Punk and Spiderus, who wrote Ultra Q, which is what we will be covering during this episode. And Danny, this is what you picked.
Yes.
I was actually surprised you picked this one. Honestly, I was expecting Beneath the Planet of the Apes to continue our series, but I
Yeah, I
digress.
thought about it. I thought I almost did, but then it popped into my brain. A couple things popped into my brain, but I stuck on Ultra Q because for reasons we're going to talk about in a minute. I won't spoil it.
Sure. Right. So, thank you everyone who submitted your answers to our trivia question. If you want to be cool like all these people and submit answers to our trivia questions, you can once we post them to our Twitter, and you can even write into the podcast by sending us an email at kaijuweekly@gmail.com. But as I said before, our main topic is Ultra Q. And I just want to add that this will be sort of an overview of the series Ultra Q. And I was going to list out, and here are the following episodes that we used to reference when talking about this series. So you can maybe go back and watch them for yourself. We will be referencing Defeat Gomez, which is the first episode of Ultra Q. Garadama, I hope I'm saying that right. We will also be referencing Goro Goro because Goro and Goro because I actually watched that on my own. We will be referencing Tokyo Ice Age, Kanagon's Cocoon, Garamon Strikes Back, the 1/8 Project, the Challenge from 2020, which
Yup.
Anyway, and the primordial amphibian Ragon. So those are the episodes that we will be referencing when we're talking about Ultra Q. So if you want to pause this episode, and if you possess the Mill Creek discs, we recommend you watch those before listening to us, because there will be spoilers if you haven't seen them yet, but you've had plenty of time by now. Go watch those and then come back, listen to us talk, or you can just listen to us talk. It's fine. So Danny, do you want to give the plot synopsis of what Ultra Q is all about?
I would love to. One of my absolute favorite shows on television. This is a show about weird, spooky, creepy, supernatural things happening. The world is out of balance. There's something off about it. Some kind of crazy secret, weird things going on behind closed doors, creepy things, visitors from other planets, weird things coming up out of the ground, mutants, natural disasters, all of these crazy things that cannot be explained and have thrown the world out of balance. And it falls on the shoulders of Mulder and Scully to do some investigating and figure out what the heck is going on with all of these things. They are stopped by this crazy guy with a cigarette. Sometimes they run afoul of their boss. There's a bunch of FBI drama that... Wait a minute. Hang on.
You're literally reading the plot synopsis to the Twilight Zone.
The plot synopsis for the Twilight Zone... Wait a minute, I was talking about The Outer Limits.
Hang on. I'm sorry. I got that totally wrong. You should take away my nerd card. You're totally talking about Lost in Space.
I am. Captain Kirk has always been my favorite Jedi, personally.
Yeah.
Sorry. I know people that would tick off. So it's all in good fun. Yes.
It's being left in, so it's on you.
Thank goodness it's preserved forever on the internet. Okay. Sure.
Yeah. So if you haven't figured out by now, because I just told you, we're talking about Ultra Q. Thank you, Danny, for that description. And on Kaiju Weekly, we like to do what we like to call our positivity sandwich, where we talk about some positives, we talk about some negatives, and then we try to wrap it up in a nice little bow with some more positives. But I imagine this is going to be more of a positivity pizza, because all the good stuff is going to be sprinkled on top with just maybe a little bit of negatives on the bottom. Who knows? We may not have any negatives at all. Just saying. This series is pretty fantastic. So Danny, since you are my guest, your opening thoughts on the series known as Ultra Q.
Ultra Q. Spock. Anyway, to keep this as brief as possible, Ultra Q is one of my favorite things on the planet. Ultra Q is a show that I heard about long before I saw it, and it was always kind of this crazy enigma to me, because I remember reading about it, I want to say actually in a chapter of Dave Callett's A Critical History and Filmography of Toho's Godzilla series. And I already knew about Ultraman. And I discovered Ultraman when I was a teenager and watched it way back then. But when I heard that there was a precursor series to Ultraman, an Ultra show without Ultraman in it, that happened before, and explained some of the things that happen in Ultraman. Some of the monsters come back, but it wasn't like Ultraman at all. It was this very eclectic, black and white film style series of basically mini 20+ minute kaiju movies that aired every week in Japan in 1966. My brain exploded and I said, I got to track this down because
Hmm.
all I heard was that it was the most amazing thing. And it was, like really, really worth finding. And at the time, this was not something you could get in the United States. The fact that I could go down the street to a Best Buy right now and get a steelbook of Ultra Q on Blu-ray will never not blow my mind. That is the coolest thing because when I found it, I had to track down unofficial DVDs of the series, and which were not subtitled. They were remastered, which was beautiful, but they were not subtitled, and which I never had a problem with. But
Sure.
it was like this, it was like a quest. It was like trying to track down this lost treasure, this part of the Ultra series that just didn't have any kind of traction at all in the United States. Not a lot of fans knew about it, and even fewer had seen it. And now
Sure.
you can stream it in a lot of places. You can stream it almost everywhere. Honestly, it's all over the place. You can get the Blu-rays, which I recommend. Go get them. But for
Mhm.
me, finally sitting down and watching it, and it's been probably 10 years since I watched Ultra Q for the first time, it remains one of my favorite kaiju things on the planet. And just in terms of pure objective quality, it's some of the best kaiju storytelling, definitely television, in ever made. I think it is some of the best. It's some of the best kaiju TV. It's some of the best kaiju ever.
Mhm.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, you're amazed by the fact that you can walk into your local Best Buy and find it. I'm amazed that I can walk into my local Walmart and find it.
Yes, that's a good point. That's a good point. It's at Walmart. How
Because
cool is that?
I was I was in Walmart the other day buying cat litter, and I just happened and I was kind of moseying on over to the DVD section because I'm like, you know what? Let's see if they have anything new that I haven't seen or just want to pick up or just kind of browse around, see what they got. And I looked down and I saw a bunch of Heisei era Ultraman, which is what I always see. I see the original Ultraman from 1966, which is not as common, but it's which is common, but it's not nearly as common. But I looked over beside of that and saw Ultra Q, and I'm like, huh. Well, that's the damnedest thing I've ever seen because to see like you have to just like I know our friends in Japan and overseas are probably used to this kind of stuff, but like here in America, it feels like they don't care about tokusatsu as much as the rest of the world cares about tokusatsu, or just Japan cares about tokusatsu. So seeing something like this on a shelf in a big box store like Walmart is just such a weird thing. Like this is somewhat unrelated, but I sent you and Nathan a picture of when I saw Howl from Beyond the Fog in their mass market DVD with their mass market DVD cover on the shelf in Walmart, and I thought it's surreal. Like we're getting all this stuff, and it's just weird to see this on shelves. But for me personally, when you told me this is what you want to do, I was actually really excited because I had watched Ultra Q when it first came to Blu-ray release through Mill Creek. I think it was in 2018 or
Would
2019.
have
You'll have
been
to refresh my
2019. 2019.
2019. So it's been a couple of years at this point. It's probably been a couple of years since I've seen Ultra Q. And I had been wanting to rewatch it, but I didn't necessarily have a reason. And you're going to tell me, well, you should never have a reason to watch Ultra Q. But I have all, but I have all this other stuff that I either have to watch for the podcast or the power trip that I'm doing with Nathan, and it's all this other stuff. I just don't have time for all of it, and I've been wanting to sit down and actually watch Ultra Q again because when I first watched it, I thought it was a fascinating little series because it mashes this like film noir, Twilight Zone, X-Files, tokusatsu, god or kaiju genre, and it puts them in a bowl and twirls the bowl around until it comes out with this wonderful doughy kaiju goodness that we got with Ultra Q. I'm trying to paint like a picture here using pizza dough
You're
analogies,
making me
but
hungry. It's working.
right, I know. Thank you. But long story short, I've been wanting to watch Ultra Q for a while because I found it to be fascinating the first time I watched it. But there was a lot of stuff that maybe I didn't quite pick up on the first time around, because I was not as deeply ingrained into the kaiju and tokusatsu fandom. I was a fan. Yes, I was a fan of Godzilla and a fan of kaiju, but I was never like in it. Like I was never really in it until I met guys like you and Nathan and Elijah and our friend Matt at Monstrosities, and people that really know their stuff when it comes to this stuff, when it comes to these when it comes to this genre. And so I just watched it as a casual fan, just wanting something different, and I fell in love with it. I really did. I fell in love with it because it's such a, I don't know, it's just such a, I mean, would Time Capsule be a fair
I think so.
um
It's it
thing to
it's a
say?
time capsule, and like you said, it's a confluence of so many disparate great things. You mentioned, Twilight Zone, you mentioned Noir, you mentioned X-Files. I'd like to throw The Outer Limits in there because it's very similar, and
Mm,
then
yeah.
obviously Kaiju, and then obviously the magic touch of Agent Tsuburaya, and all of the familiar Toho faces that are in the show, and all of the familiar special effects and the monsters and things like that. And
Yeah.
you throw it in a blender, and the result, it just works.
Yeah. There's definitely some familiar stuff. If you are a fan of this genre, if you're a fan of kaiju, but you've never watched something like Ultra Q before, there is going to be some things that make you feel right at home.
Oh, yeah.
Um, there is. It's not going to be. It's not going to be like totally prevalent throughout the series, but you will have some smatterings of like what I called in my notes, traditional kaiju action, or traditional, what did I say? Traditional kaiju violence. There we go. That's what I wrote in my notes. And I'm specifically referencing Defeat Gomes, or Defeat Gomez. Gomez? Is it
Gomez.
Gomez or
Gomez.
Gomez?
Gomesu.
Def- yeah, Defeat Gomez, which is an interesting little story. So essentially, to give a little bit of backstory, some miners discover a tunnel within a mountainside, and that tunnel happens to contain an egg and another giant monster. And of course, they unearth the egg, they bring it to the surface, and they discover there's another giant monster under the ground. And of course, what you would expect to happen happens. The giant monster gets loose and fights the other monster,
Litra.
uh,
Litora.
Li-
Yeah.
Litra.
Litora.
It
Or
sounded
Litra.
exactly like
It
Litra.
can be
Okay,
said both ways. Like in Japanese, there's a vowel between the two consonants, so it's litora, but it's usually written out in English as litra. But either one
okay.
works.
So this episode was pretty. I don't want to say it was. I don't want to say it was like run of the mill. I don't want to say it was like a phone or generic or whatever. But it was very familiar for what us as fans are used to. In fact, the opening episode of Ultra Q, the first episode of Ultra Q, reminded me a lot of the original 1956 Rodan.
Oh
Um,
yeah, absolutely.
it there was a lot of similarities there that was clicking with
And
me,
it doesn't.
and
Oh, go ahead.
and I was just gonna say it was able to pack in a lot of stuff within just about a 21 to 22 minute episode.
Absolutely, and I think what I was going to say is that one of the big things that drives the Rodan comparison home is the fact that I guess I should back up a little bit. So Ultra Q kind of almost functions like an anthology series, but it is connected via continuity, and most of the episodes have a trio of recurring characters. And
They do.
the leader of this trio of recurring characters, Manjume, is played by Kenji Sahara, who's in Rodan. So you've got more scenes of Kenji Sahara getting lost inside of a mine in this first episode. So
Pretty much.
that helps can draw the Rodan comparisons a lot for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So, Defeat Gomez is a great little episode. It's a nice opener, but it is definitely not, I would say, the norm throughout the series,
It's
because
yeah.
it's not the norm. If like you're like I said, if you're looking for like traditional kaiju violence, like big monster fights other big monster, you're not gonna get that a whole lot. You will get large kaiju, like in Goro and Goro. You have a giant chimpanzee, but it's these episodes are going to be a little bit more, maybe methodical is the word I'm looking for. There's a lot of mystery wrapped up into these episodes. It really is just the Japanese Twilight Zone or the Japanese X Files. Honestly, is
It
the
is.
best way I know how to describe it.
And it functions in that same vein again, even though it's not a true anthology. But the
Mhm,
thing about Ultra Q, and I think the thing that makes it as strong as it is, along with, I mean, there are a lot of things that make it as good as it is, but one of my favorite aspects of Ultra Q is the eclecticism of it. There's
mhm,
like this first episode to me is the traditional monster. This is the most kaiju movie episode of the whole batch. It's the
sure,
only one that has a monster fight. The other
yeah.
27 episodes don't have monster fights. This feels like something you would have seen in a theater at the time. And that was probably by design because, you know, this was an attempt to get people to watch something like this on a TV. And it worked, by the way. It definitely worked. And
Yeah,
eventually,
you
yeah,
you were telling me this is water cool that this show is definitely water cooler talk,
this,
but definitely
yeah,
water cooler
Water
talk.
Cooler
There we
talk.
go, talk,
it
talk.
it was. This show was a phenomenon when it came out in Japan in the very beginning of January of 1966. This show was the show that it was a household show. People were talking about it at home.
Mm,
People were saying, "Hey, did you see the latest episode of Ultra Q?" It was the talk of the town. It was the Toku talk of
mhm,
the town.
right,
This it was completely it was really a phenomenon. And this first episode feels the most like a traditional Godzilla kind of a film. But then once we
mhm,
get into the later episodes, as we'll discuss here, you start noticing that there are very few episodes of this show that feel like any of the other episodes. There's and then there's some really crazy standout ones that will, and I made sure to
mhm.
that we were going to talk about at least a few of those. It
Oh,
Yeah, but
absolutely.
I love how eclectic it is. And I think that that's definitely something I wanted to bring up, is just how different each episode is from every other episode. It's like they said we've got a 20 something minutes to try something we didn't try in the last one. Let's do it. And they did it.
It's definitely not what we would consider serialized.
No, no.
You know, you have a like now you have, you have shows that each episode builds upon another. But the only real continuity each one of these has is the troupe of actors and actresses that play various characters throughout this series.
Yeah, and they're great. I mean, the main trio of the show. I mentioned Jun Manjume, who's played by Kenji Sahara, but you also have Ippei, his sidekick, who's always laughing at something. I love that guy. And you have
Mhm.
Yuriko. And people who know Ultraman will recognize the actress who plays Yuriko. That's Hiroko Sakurai. She was Fuji in Ultraman.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
you got two familiar faces there. You know, you can see Ippei in a bunch of stuff if you watch Toho movies. All of these people were Toho regulars. And then I guess the fourth recurring character would be the scientist Ichinotani, Dr. Ichinotani, who will sometimes
Mhm.
show up with his Colonel Sanders mustache, and he'll provide uh, some kind of scientific insight into what's going on. He plays a big role in the second episode or the third episode, Gift from Space, which has a big giant space slug that comes down. And then
Mhm.
he has a big part in the fourth episode, Mammoth Flower, which is about a big flower that grows out of a building and the vines start killing people. And if you've
Mhm.
ever seen Gamera 2, it's the same thing as the Legion Flower. This is where that idea came from, because
Mhm.
Shusuke Kaneko is a great big giant Ultra Q fan. That's what,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, BS Digital
Yeah.
Q from GMK.
There there was definitely some Toho veterans in, or yeah, what we would consider Toho veterans in Ultra Q. Like Akihiko Harada was in a few
Yeah, he's in a
episodes.
few.
Uh, he was in a few of the episodes that we watched. If I'm not mistaken, he was in Garamon Strikes Back or Garamanda.
He would
Um,
have been
I think.
in the second one, Garamon Strikes Back. I think he's in that one. I don't.
Mhm.
He's in one of the. He's not in the first one. Yeah, he's in the second one because he has a bit of a kerfuffle with the alien in that one that was
Mhm.
rather memorable. Either that or yeah, it's good
Oh
stuff.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah. That was right. Because when the alien leaves and walks into the lake. Yes, I remember. Okay, yeah, you're right. So yeah, there's a lot of these episodes in Ultra Q that don't feel what we would traditionally know at what we would traditionally be comfortable with or familiar with, I should say, as far as like the kaiju genre goes. They're a very, very unique set of there's it's just a very unique series in general. Like one of the standout episodes, I know a lot of people reference this when they talk about Ultra Q, is the episode called Kanigon's Cocoon, which is a really interesting little story about a, a greedy little boy who wants to keep all the money for himself, even away from his parents, and it has a very heavy-handed message attached to it of greed and selfishness, and it's just a really fascinating episode.
It is. It's a morality tale. It's the
Mhm,
morality tale episode. I always
mhm,
when I think about Ultra Q, I think of the fill in the blank episode. Like one of my favorite episodes is uh, Baron Spider, which is the haunted house episode about the when
mhm,
they end up in the house and it's haunted, quote unquote, by a spider who is the reincarnation of the Baron who lived there, and then the second spider is the reincarnation of his daughter. But it's a haunted house
mhm.
episode with giant spiders. When I think of
Yeah.
Kanagon's Cocoon, that's the morality tale. And I read once somewhere that Kanagon's Cocoon, to this day, it's one of those pieces of pop culture that Japan as a society, as a culture, is pretty universally aware of. You know how everyone kind of knows Steamboat Willie? You know, like you can see Mickey Mouse whistling
Yeah.
in your head. The
Yeah.
morality tale and the image of Kanegon, who in the episode is the little boy, because the little boy is this greedy little cretin who just wants money, and he ultimately ends up transforming into this kind of hideous extraterrestrial style monster who has this big
Mhm,
saucer shaped head with these two little googly eyes on stalks, and his mouth is a coin purse with a zipper, and he has to eat coins and he has to eat money or he will die. And so his greed, his lust for money has turned into it went from being a vice to now it's crippling him, and he now has to indulge it in order to live. And that face, that Kanegon face, is all over the place in Japan. So people,
mhm,
that might be the most prevalent and well-known episode of the entire show, Kanegon's Cocoon.
mhm.
People who've never seen that episode know about it, at least in Japan.
Well, it's one of the most it's one of the more recognizable would you call them was it you wouldn't necessarily I wouldn't call this a kaiju, maybe a kaijin? Am I getting the
Maybe,
terminology correct?
maybe, or maybe he's Henshin because he transforms from a little boy.
Maybe,
I don't think
maybe,
so, but
but
maybe. I don't know. I'm just throwing all the words in. I mean, technically, Kanegon is usually thrown in that group, even though he's human sized. He's technically categorized as a kaiju by Tsuburaya. They've referred to him as such before. And
mhm,
they kind of, I've noticed that there's a tendency to group him in with a lot of the smaller monsters, like Pigmon from Ultraman, and another creation from Tsuburaya Productions named Buska, has nothing to do with the Ultra series, but he's this kind of big, hairy, chipmunk looking alien guy. He's not actually an
mhm,
alien; he's a mutant lizard, but it's from
yeah,
a concurrently produced children's series. But it's a guy in a big,
yeah,
hairy suit. Buska, look him up. He's
yeah.
adorable.
Yeah, there's I feel like that is probably one of the most maybe heavy-handed episodes
It's not
in
subtle.
Ultra Q. For the most part, a lot of these episodes tend to be more subtle. At least the ones that I went back and reviewed for this discussion tend to be a little bit more subtle. Another one that comes into my mind. It's a tiny little bit more subtle. Is the 1/8 project,
Yes.
which is an interesting little commentary about a very overly populated growing society. And I asked you, I think it was I asked you and Dan, or asked you and Nate the other night when I was watching this, like, did Japan have a population crisis or a population problem? Because that seems like what they're alluding to. Because the premise is, and correct me if I'm getting all this, if I'm making sure I get all this correct. The premise is you have these different sectors within this city or this town or this island or this community, and each of them serve a different purpose. Well, there's this one sector that is called the 1/8 project, and what they do is they shrink everything down to 1/8 its size. Like humans, buildings, everything gets shrunk down to 1/8 its size. And what they're doing is trying to make sure that there's plenty of room for everyone. So the solution they come up with was to shrink people to make more room. So and that's a really Cliff Notes version of what's going on there. But this one felt the most, I don't know, maybe Hitchcock like of the set we
Yeah,
watched.
yeah, it's the 1/8 Project is one of the most interesting episodes of the show, but if you're going to this thing expecting it to be a kaiju episode, you're not gonna like it because there are no
No.
kaiju per se in it. The quote unquote it's basically it's almost a send up. It's a complete, like, weird reversal of the genre that turns it on its head. So one of the main characters ends up inadvertently part of this 1/8 Project and is shrunk down to to tiny size, and her two friends, Yuriko, she gets shrunk down. And so
Mhm.
Ippei and Jun have to go and find her, and they become the giant monsters walking around this miniature city, but it's all really that small. They're
Sure.
not giant. They just look giant because everybody else has been shrunk down. So they're basically playing with the kaiju trope of going through the city, but it's only visual, and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to trip over this tree or this power line," and
It's a little bit
it
comical
is,
too.
especially when Ippei starts accidentally destroying buildings like a kaiju would, and it kind of makes you see certain monster attacks in a different light. Like, oh, maybe they're just people that are bigger, or animals that are bigger that are wandering around. But the
Yeah.
the real kind of the real world tie to that is that this was a time in Japan when people were going to the city. People were
Mhm.
moving from the more rural areas of Japan, and they were going into the cities to get jobs, and they were working. This is basically 3 years later. This is the it would lead to the problems that Godzilla's Revenge are all about, where the city is just
Mhm.
super stuffed. There's endless congestion on the streets, and children are wandering around next to very fast cars on highways, and the parents are at work and they can't be with the kids. Just horrible stuff. But
Yeah.
in 1966, it was starting to build toward that the economy was booming. People were
Mhm.
moving to these cities, and so there was this real fear that Japan, space is a real commodity in Japan. It's not a huge place. I mean, it's
Sure.
big, but there's a lot of people in Japan, and it's an island or a series of islands. So space is really, really a commodity there. So the idea of getting more of it by making people smaller is an interesting sci-fi concept and an interesting sci-fi approach to that debate and that discussion, in an interesting way. One of those ways that sci-fi, I think, is really, really effective, in that it can take on these social issues like overcrowding in a city, but still make it entertaining and present it in a way that doesn't feel like it's preaching to you.
Mhm. It's why you have now, I think it's in Japan. I'm pretty sure it's in Japan, or maybe this is Korea that I'm thinking of, that has, like, the little pod
Yeah,
motels
yeah,
where
that's in
is
Japan.
that is it in
Yeah, it's
Japan,
in
the little
Japan.
pod motels? Okay, so for anyone who's not familiar, can you explain to the listeners what I'm talking about when I say pod
I
motel?
guess the easiest way to describe it is that they're basically these little nooks in a wall that are barely big enough for you to stretch out and lay down on, and you can rent them out for a night. The tourists are kind of fascinated by them, but more often than not, they're actually used by businessmen and salarymen who work late, leave their office, go get a drink, eat some ramen, and then they need a place to crash for a few hours before they go back to work. So they will go rent out one of these little pods that's basically a hotel room if it was just a hole in a wall and a pillow. Basically, I mean, they don't
Basically.
they're like they almost it almost looks like you're sleeping in like a little egg. You know,
Yeah.
they're an interesting phenomena, and again, it's all about saving room. I mean, how many people can you put into a normal hotel, and then how many people could you put in there if you only gave them the bed?
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's an
Yeah.
interesting phenomenon.
The concept of these is fascinating, but it just kind of, it's like you said, to bring it back to the conversation about the 1/8 project, it's an interesting little commentary on kind of the economic boom that was happening at that time in Japan, where it was really overcrowded. And I just want to mention too, like, something that also really fascinated me about that episode was it kind of flipped what we know as, like, quote unquote kaiju or tokusatsu film on its ear, because instead of making, you know, the actress giant and everything small, she's small and everything is giant. Like there's a giant camera and a giant pencil and it's I think that stuff is super interesting. Like the scene that's sticking out to me thinking about it is the scene where she makes it to, I believe it's her sister's house, and to use the telephone. And that telephone is huge, but the telephone looks like, as a practical effect, looks great. The company, the Mr. Subaraya and his team did a fantastic job of building that telephone. And I just think that stuff like that, like movies like or shows like this, and um, movies like Honey I Shrunk the Kids and things of that nature. I'm really dating myself now. Um, I find really fascinating
Oh, I do too.
to take
Yeah.
to take things that are normally like very small, maybe no bigger than our fingernail sometimes, and blowing them up to where they're monstrous size to where they could actually be harmful. I don't know. It's just a really fascinating thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking
No,
it.
I love stories like that. One of my favorite movies on the planet is The Incredible Shrinking Man, which
Oh
is
yeah,
a
or the
legit.
Incredible Shrinking Woman
Yeah,
with Lily
that's
Tomlin.
right.
Is it Lily
I
Tomlin?
think so.
Right?
Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
But my gosh, the original Incredible Shrinking Man, if anybody out there has not seen that movie, it is a legitimate. I know that like today, I guess that people would say, "Oh, it's a hokey title," but
Mhm.
Incredible Shrinking Man. But for real, it is a legitimate science fiction masterpiece. I'm not
Mhm.
even joking. It introspective. It treats the idea of a person gradually getting like shrinking. It gets into his head, and you understand how he feels. He feels like terrible as a person. He feels insufficient as a husband. Like you get to hear his insecurities. So it's an interesting peek into a kind of a shrinking tiny person story. Go watch that film. There's actually a lot of that movie, I think, in the 1/8
Mhm.
project. There are echoes of it for sure.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What I really loved about this one and some of the other episodes that we watched to kind of prepare for this podcast, I really love hard sci-fi, which is why I think I like Star Trek more than I like Star Wars, because I feel like the hard sci-fi element is a lot stronger in that show, in that franchise.
Hmm.
But I just really love hard sci-fi. I love War of the Worlds and books of that and books of that ilk. So two of the episodes that I really enjoyed, which I feel like gave a really good mix of mystery, science fiction mumbo jumbo, and kaiju action, are Garamana and Garamon Strikes Back. And we get to see the introduction of what would later be known as Pigmon, because I don't think they're not the same creature,
No,
but they're not the same creature, but it's, if you know what Pigmon is, Garumon is Pigmon, just
it's
bigger.
the same suit. It's
Yeah.
literally the same.
It's
It's the same
literally the
suit.
same suit.
Yeah, it's an interesting. It's one of only two parters that Ultra Q ever did, because again, the continuity was there with the characters, but it was
Mhm.
pretty loose. But they did do two-part episodes, and they weren't consecutive. They were spread out over multiple episodes. And the first one, Garadama, is about this meteorite that crashes and it dries up this lake, and it's mostly about trying to rescue the human characters that are stuck there. But this big
Sure.
old goofy looking critter comes out, and it's basically, imagine Pigmon from Ultraman if you're picturing him in your head, if you know who that character is. If not, look him up on Google and prepare to say "aw," because he's very cute. But just
Yes.
imagine that, but really really big. And he's also supposed to be a robot in Ultra Q, which is why he
Which I never really
he,
understood,
he
but okay.
clanks when he walks. Like they're supposed to be like bio, or like I guess cybernetic. They've got some organic bits on them, but they're mostly robotic, and you don't really understand. It's kind of, I guess, trying to think of a good way to describe this. You know how in Ghidorah the three-headed monster, Ghidorah comes to the planet in a meteor and then breaks out and causes some havoc and then runs away. And then in the next movie, he's being controlled by aliens. And that's the force that brings him to Earth. That's kind of what this two-parter is like. In the first part, the meteorite hits the planet, and it's this big meteorite, but it's being it has this link to a smaller meteorite that a human can carry, and that's the Garadama
Mhm.
object. And it summons this monster, and then they finally realize that once they seal the Garadama meteorite away from the monster, they can cut off whatever crazy signals are controlling it, and then it dies. They kill the monster just by wrapping it in some kind of tinfoil. And then in the next one, you find out that the Garamon monsters were being sent to the planet by an invading alien force, and you get to see these
Mhm.
aliens, and that's where like the really cool hard sci-fi stuff comes in, and you get a good alien invasion story in
Yeah.
Ultra Q. So like I said,
I
it's
think it's
all over the board. The show.
I think it's stated in the Garomon Strikes Back that I think it's towards the tail end of the episode where they're like, "Oh, so the aliens were here all the whole time." And what I'm wondering is because I kind of want to backtrack because in my notes when I was watching the first episode, Defeat Gomez, is this supposed to be a world where monsters and aliens don't exist, or are they just not seen or known by the general population yet?
It's kind of a mixture of both. I guess the easiest way to give insight into that is the fact that this show, before it was called Ultra Q, the original working title of the show was the Unbalanced Zone, or
Mm,
it's something that used the word unbalanced. They went through a couple of different variations, and and that really drives home the Twilight Zone thing, unbalance. And and you hear the narrator talk about it a little bit, the idea that something has happened in this world, in this reality, that is unbalanced, and this
mm,
imbalance in the natural order has caused weird things to start happening. So the implication, at least to me, is that in this world there either haven't been monsters for a very long time, or there haven't been monsters at all. But I mean, Defeat Gomez is a very good example, because there's an ancient scroll in that episode that talks about a prophecy wherein Gomez will be defeated by Litera. It's been
mm,
documented, which means that somebody made that scroll, who knows when, that knew those two monsters existed. Maybe they saw them. Maybe they had a previous battle. Who knows? So the idea, it is almost that the world goes in and out of these unbalanced phases, and when the world is out of balance, that's when the monsters rise. And actually later on in the show, in not Ultra Q the show, but the Ultra series, that idea is actually explored further in the last entry in the original Showa run, because they did Ultra Q, Ultraman, Ultra 7, and then all the way up through Ultraman 80. And it's explained in that show that the world has an abundance, our world, our universe, has an abundance of negative energy. And
mm,
this negative energy, that's the unbalance that's causing monsters to come up out of the earth, and ancient prophecies to be fulfilled, and it's drawing alien invaders to the planet. It's this negative juju, basically. And it's not really explained much farther than that, but that idea of the world being out of balance and that creating monsters is one of the things that is it's a through line throughout the entire Ultra show, the entire Ultra series. And it has
mm,
its origins here, but I like how vague it is in this, at least in this series. The idea that
mm.
something's wrong, we don't know what, but it doesn't matter, because now there are monsters and we have to deal with it, and we're not prepared to deal with it because it's beyond
Th-
us.
this show is really uncomfortable. Not in a like, oh, I'm scared kind of way. Like there are scary moments. I
Oh
remember
yeah.
like the spider episode is truly terrifying considering, and like if you put yourself in the position of someone in 1966, I'm sure that's incredibly terrifying. Um but this show is quirky and weird and very and a lot of times makes you a little bit uncomfortable, whether it's an and I don't know what it is about the I don't know what it is about the opening theme song, that na 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 na
Mhm.
na, it just feels a little bit, I don't know, it just makes me a little uncomfortable. It's not in like a bad way. It's just in a weird, like, I don't know what this is kind of way. Cause I remember watching Ultra Q for the first time and the theme song first came on. Um, and I'm just like, this is odd. Like, this is so weird. But like it does make you slightly uncomfortable because, and I think the writers and the directors and the cinematographers throughout Ultra Q do a very wonderful job of really leaning hard into the mystery aspect of Ultra Q. And if I'm not mistaken, the Q in Ultra Q is just stands for question,
It
correct?
can stand for generally yes, but it's there's a bunch of like quest is another one. Q is just a very interesting, quirky kind of a letter, you know.
Mm,
Q, you know, words that start with Q, the infrequency with which the letter Q is used in the English alphabet, and just as a sound in general, it
sure.
makes it kind of a mysterious letter if you think about it. It's a good kind of lettery stand-in for things that we don't really understand. And again, words like quest and question and
Mm,
questioning and things like that, you know, trying to find answers to something, trying to figure out what a mystery is. It's just
mm,
it's a very quirky, interesting letter. It looks good, you know, like seeing Ultra Q written out in Japanese and in English just looks awesome with that Q in there. It's just an eye catching thing. And I do have to agree on your topic of talking about the music. It's very disquieting, and there's something about it that almost makes you feel like you need to look over your shoulder. Not
a
scary,
little.
not scary,
Mhm,
but disquieting. And
mhm,
kudos to the great Kunio Miyauchi for really. I mean, his music in this show, it must be said, is outstanding. And he later did Ultraman, and Godzilla fans will know him as the gentleman who scored All Monsters Attack, aka Godzilla's
mhm.
Revenge. But this was, yeah, I mean, Miyauchi-san did so good on this show, and it's such an eclectic soundtrack, just like the show. There's quirky bits, there's upbeat bits, there's creepy bits, there's mysterious bits, there's fantastical bits. It runs the gamut just like the show does. It's a perfect compliment.
Yeah, there's like little nods to, I guess I would you call this like nods to popular Western culture when I say that the episode that comes to mind when I say that is the primordial amphibian Ragon, which looks identical to the Gill Man.
Yes, he does.
Um, he looks very much like the Gill Man, but just a no, I'm not gonna say. I was gonna say like a cheaper version of the Gill Man, but that's not fair. That's not fair. I don't believe.
No,
Um,
it's
but
it's in the
I
same it's in that family of Gilman-esque fish people. Eiji Tsuburaya was
mm,
a big Creature from the Black Lagoon fan, so that's one of the
mhm.
reasons that's in there. It's a little homage. I mean, there are scenes in that episode, in the Ragon episode, that are pretty much right out of the first Creature from the Black Lagoon movie. So it's the homage is clear. Also, that's Ben Furuya in that suit, the guy who would eventually be
Oh,
Ultraman. You can tell.
I mean, it looks good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good looking, it's basically a wetsuit with a fish head on it, you know,
Mhm.
it's not that detailed, it's not very detailed, but it's fanciful, and it almost looks like, maybe if the Gillman had been made on a TV budget in the 1960s in Japan, it fits.
Mm,
It fits, and
yeah,
I love the eyes on the Ragon suit. I like how they glow, that's always fun, but depending on the angle that the head turns, it could either be shocked or sad or angry or determined or give me back my child. It's it's a I love the face on that thing. It doesn't look, but that's the thing, is it doesn't look like a real animal, but it wasn't trying to. That's the thing about kaiju movies, is that they're not trying to look like real animals. They're trying to create a mood, a feeling. They're trying to create a fantastical, it's like a sculpture that's come to life. You know,
yeah,
it's not supposed to be. It's not realism. It's reality. And to me, Ultra Q
mhm,
is one of the best examples of in the kaiju genre of stepping into a reality where these things are real. And as
mm,
silly or as outlandish even as some of them might be, and the Ultra series eventually does get very outlandish. It's it's a universe. It's a reality that you're stepping into where you let go of those ideas of this doesn't look like a real dinosaur or a real monster, or the weight doesn't, you don't think about that stuff. And Ultra
yeah,
Q is the perfect gateway to that, because it has moments of like creepy realism, but it's
mhm,
also a fantasy show in a lot of ways, and I love that.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Like there was no. there was no creepier an episode that I personally watched during this session than the one titled Challenge from year 2020.
Oh boy.
Uh, that is it's something.
It is it is a surreal episode. It is one of the most surreal episodes of the bunch. It's one of the I think you gotta watch it a couple times to really kind of pick it apart because there's all these different layers about the stuff in the book that starts coming true, and then the aliens, and then people being disintegrated by goo. The scene where Jun's he and Yuriko are running to each other, and then his face starts to contort, and it's upsetting. Like it's a creepy episode.
It is, and and like you said, there was a lot of that. I think there was a lot in that episode that I didn't quite pick up on, so I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch that particular episode to really notice everything that episode has. Because I know there's, there's the book and the prophecy and all that stuff that's coming true. There's the hard sci-fi element, and there's just so much that episode in itself is playing with that I think it does deserve a rewatch of a couple more times to really grasp everything that's going on.
Absolutely. There's a few episodes like that in the show. The one that I always think of in that regard is actually the last episode of the show, which is
Mhm.
Open Up, which is the one about the man who gets stuck on a flying interdimensional train and wants nothing more than to get off the train. Um,
Yeah.
and then he
But
does.
isn't that also the episode? Isn't that also the episode, if I'm thinking of it correctly? Isn't that also the one where the people on the train are trying to escape something? Like they're trying to escape a former life or something of that
Yes,
nature. Is that the one?
the idea is that the well, he's not a villain, but he's the central mysterious figure of that episode, played by the great Ace Yamamoto. The
Mhm.
great, and everybody would know him as Doctor Who from King Kong Escapes and
Doctor Who.
Doctor Who. I love that. I mean, he is such a phenomenal actor, and he has a role in this episode as a man who transports people from our world to another dimension that he discovered in this flying bullet train. And he takes people who are unhappy in their lives and brings them to this other dimensional utopia. And the guy who gets picked up as a salary man, and he doesn't understand why he's there, and he spends the first, big chunk of the episode when he wakes up on the train just wandering around screaming and trying to get out. He says, "Akitekure, akitekure, let me out, open up." Literally, he's
Mhm.
screaming the name of the episode, and it's explained to him, well, you're here because you don't like your life. And he's like, "What are you talking about? I love my life. I have a good life. I want to get back to it. Let me out." And so finally he's
Mhm.
like, "You know what, let's just get rid of this guy." So they dump him out, and it's actually a very, very haunting, creepy, unsettling plot line because he gets picked up and his wife thinks he's drunk and she's berating him, and you find out that he really doesn't enjoy his life very much. And the episode, and this is a spoiler, so if you want to see this, then don't listen to what I'm about to say, but I'm gonna spoil it. The episode ends with him chasing the train as it's in the sky, going away from him. He leaves his house and walks away, and he's standing outside at night and he sees the train, and he's running after the train, begging the train to take him with the
Mhm.
train, because he's like, "You know what, you guys were right. My life sucks. I want to go. I want to. You guys had a point. I want to go to that other dimension." So it's a complete reversal. The beginning of it is like, "No, I love my life. Let me out." But the end is like, "No, you guys were right. Let me in. Let me in." Oh, and
Yeah.
then he yells, "Open up again." And there's no monster in that episode. There's no kaiju. Actually, they got in trouble because the their deal with Ultra Q was that there was to be a monster in every episode, because that
Mhm.
was the thing that people were watching the show for. And when
Right.
episode 28 didn't have a monster, the station actually refused to air the episode, so it went unaired for a few months. Um,
Interesting.
and I actually don't think it aired until either right before or right after Ultraman premiered. I don't remember exactly what the timeline looks like. It's a little fuzzy in my brain, but they retained that episode. They held it over because basically to punish Subaraya for not having a kaiju in it. And it's weird. It's ironic because I think it's one of the show's best episodes.
Sure. Yeah, I actually did not get the chance to watch that one for this recording, but um I remember people talking about it. I remember slightly a little bit about it from my previous watch through, and d- noticing how interesting the commentary was, because I think there's a part of us as humans that wishes that we could do things over, or we could leave that we could leave our current situation or our current life and go on into another one. And as we know, that's not always the case. So I think that that episode is a good commentary on sort of an internal desire that we as humans might have been feeling at the time, or we do feel from time to time.
I agree. I think everyone has that thought. And for a lot of people, it's very fleeting. And I'm not talking about people who actually have like cripplingly bad
Right.
lives that are like, I'm not talking about, like, there are a lot of people who need to get out of bad situations, but I'm not talking about
Sure.
that. I'll use myself as an example. Like, I live a pretty good, comfortable life. I
Mhm.
enjoy the job that I have now. I get to do cool things where I'm on podcasts and I talk about monsters. I collect things. I have a family that I love, and I friends and all that good stuff. But if I were to say, not recently, but like when I was younger, that I didn't have that thought of, man, I wish I could just pack it all up and take off to somewhere better, then I'd be lying. If everybody has had that thought. And
Sure.
it's been explored in movies before. Like, my one of my favorite movies of all time is Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is
Mhm.
literally a movie, and Steven Spielberg has admitted this, or about a man who, you know, isn't like, he doesn't quite fit in on the planet, and he knows it and he feels it, but he can't define it. And he ends up giving
Yeah.
up his family and his kids, his wife, and going on this intergalactic journey. He goes on the mothership. And Steven has said many, many times, I don't know why I'm first name basis. I'm not on a first name basis with Steven Spielberg. Mr. Spielberg, if you please, has has said before that, yeah, me and Steven, we're pretty close.
You're pretty tight, you know.
Yeah.
You were bros back in college. It's
Yeah,
fine.
we're buddies. Yeah, but Mr. Spielberg, if you please, has said before that if he were, like, he wouldn't make that movie now, because it was at that
Mhm.
point in his life where, the idea of packing everything up and taking off, had kind of not altruistic, but kind of like a pie in the sky kind of a, I would totally do that, kind of a loosey goosey feel to it. But even a decade or two later, he said, I wouldn't make that movie now, because that's not who I am anymore. And
Yeah.
so everyone has gone through that. Everybody has had that, whether it be, yes, I have to do this, or just a fleeting thought of grass is greener over there.
Right. I was telling somebody earlier today, I think enjoyment in media is subjective. You can read whatever you want to read um into whatever the media you're listening to or watching. And there's just a ton of stuff. I feel like there's a ton of meat to Ultra Q, where you could approach, like, three different people would approach a a random episode of Ultra Q from three distinct directions, because it really just kind of it really just comes from a place of where you are, like in your experiences with the genre, in your life experiences. And there's just a lot of stuff to dissect and unpack with this series, which makes it such an interesting little treasure trove of for tokusatsu media, or just media in general. Like, it's unique among all the things that you and I and others enjoy, because Ultra Q has so much more to say, I feel like, than your, I guess, more run of the mill monster movie, or your more run of the mill science fiction movie or something. So there's just a lot to unpack with Ultra Q.
I agree. I agree. And it all goes back to how eclectic it is, and how I kind of see Ultra Q as a microcosm of the kaiju genre in general. Because to me, kaiju and monster movies, and we'll use Godzilla as an example. I've
Sure.
been quoted as saying multiple times that there's a Godzilla for all seasons. Name
Mhm.
a genre, name a storytelling type, Godzilla has done it. And
Right.
usually, at least if you ask me, done it pretty darn well. And if he hasn't
Mhm.
done it yet, he will. Trust me. And the kaiju genre is all about that eclecticism. If you're in the mood
Mhm.
for something dark and serious, there's, you got stuff for that, or something that's straight up parody, or something
Sure.
silly, or something that's more lighthearted, fantasy, allegorical, psychedelic. It's all there. You can find it. And if you watch Ultra Q, within that 28 episodes is all of that. There's something there that speaks to everyone. We mentioned that the first episode was very kind of run of the mill kaiju, and then there are other, very run of the mill stories like Terror of Sweet Honey, which is actually one of my favorites, with the giant mole monster. There's nothing
Mhm.
particularly outstanding about that episode, but it's a fun, monster on the loose story. Very simple story about a mole that, gets into some honey that has some, chemicals in it, and it turns him big. And then you've got something like the Spider Baron, which is the haunted house episode. And then you've got something like I Saw a Bird, about the little boy who finds this cute little bird, and at
Mhm.
night it turns into a giant monster and starts killing things. And it's a little bonding story. It's like a boy and his monster kind of a, it's kind of like ET.
Mhm.
It's like a boy and his creature kind of a thing. And then you've got Kanagan's Cocoon, which is the morality tale. And then you've got something like like the Underground Super Express Goes West, which is silly.
Which is just so
It's so
weird.
silly, and I love it. It's so bizarre, especially the end when he's up in space and he says, I don't remember how to say it in Japanese, but he says, "I'm a gull. I'm a gull." Like, what are you
Mhm.
doing, man? It's a bizarre one. And then there's the fairy tale episode, "Grow Up Little Turtle," which
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love, which is, on its own, interesting. It's an interesting little episode, but if you know your history, it's based on the Urashima Taro fantasy about the man who goes underwater and meets the princess, and a bunch of time passes when he comes back up to the surface. So it's based on a Japanese myth, but it also has a turtle with a speedometer built into the shell. It's just a bizarre. There's so much going on in this show. Metamorphosis, about the guy who looks suspiciously like a really skinny Toshiro Mifune, growing to be a giant caveman,
Mhm.
with the butterflies. Like, this show is all over the map. There's stuff all over the place. And there's at least one episode that will speak to every kind of kaiju fan, I think, or most
Mhm.
kinds. And I think that's its
Yeah,
strength, because you'll find something amazing in it, no matter where you look.
yeah. Well, that sounds like to me, Danny, you just gave your final thoughts. I was getting ready to ask you what your final thoughts are,
I
but
think that sums it up. I
um,
think that sums it up.
that pretty yeah, that pretty much sums it up. So the only thing left for you personally to do is give your Godzuki score, which feels very much inappropriate for what we're talking about. But who are not initiated to our podcast, if this is your first episode, we like to rate our movies and television shows based on our Godzuki score, which is Godzilla's bumbling nephew from the Hanna-Barbera cartoon. We like to use him as our yardstick because we like to embrace the sillier side of this genre. So Danny, out of 5 Godzukis, what would you give Ultra Q as a whole?
All right. As a whole, this is I could draw this out unnecessarily, but this is the easiest 5
Mhm.
Godzukis I've ever given.
Uh-huh. For sure, for sure.
Absolutely.
Uh, for sure, yeah. I mean, Ultra Q is a fun series. Like, as someone um, uh, who has not necessarily dove as deep as someone, say, like you or John LeMay or Nate or others who are basically, I would consider kaiju historians in this fandom, from an inside outside perspective, I really enjoy Ultra Q. I love the hard sci-fi. I love the dark noir aspect of it. I like the mystery. I like the science fiction, the Hitchcock, the that kind of feeling towards. I like how it runs the gamut from traditional kaiju violence to extremely thoughtful morality tale that makes you kind of cock your head to the side and think a little bit. So I like that there's a good variety of things to take away from Ultra Q, which makes it incredibly interesting and a series I highly recommend anyone watch. If I don't know if Ultraman and Henshin Heroes is not necessarily your thing, but you want a little bit of taste of some classic kaiju action, or just or you just enjoy a good mystery with a little bit of with a little smattering of giant monster or kaiju mixed in, go watch Ultra Q. I've been trying to get Julie to watch Ultra Q with me for months now, and because I know I know she enjoys the Twilight Zone, and I know she enjoys shows like that, and I know she would enjoy Ultra Q if I could just get her to sit down and watch it with me. But I recommend you watch Ultra Q. What's great about it is at the time of this recording, let me do a little bit of a search here on the old
You're in
Amazon.
the search on the old Amazon, are you?
I got a search on the old Amazon
Yeah.
here.
Well,
Hey, if you'll give me if you'll bear with me just a second here. Just
I'll tell the listeners about me war stories. Wait a minute.
oh
Wait, can't do that. I'm missing the Honeymooners marathon.
well,
That ja-
that's very
that Jackie Gleason is one funny son of a gun. Let me tell you.
oh, he is.
I
He's one
would.
of my favorite. He's one of my favorite actors of all time.
Uh,
I have no idea why we're talking like this, but okay.
because we're old,
Uh,
Sonny.
we're old. We're old sons of bitches. Is what we are. Uh,
I mean, old because I'm old. You see. Okay. Anyway.
okay. So my stalling has paid off, and I was able to find Ultra Q on Amazon. It is currently $20.99.
That's
Uh,
good. That's good.
that is a good price. That is a fantastic, and that is not the steelbook. That is not the steelbook version.
Mm.
The steelbook version looks to be out of stock, but you can still just get the normal Blu-ray, which is what I have. I quickly returned my steelbooks after I got them. I love steelbooks, but the fact that they just stacked them all on top of each
Yeah,
other made me nervous.
not great. I'm trying not to be. Listen, I am incredibly grateful to Mill Creek for all of the stuff that they have put out. It has been a just absolute avalanche, an ultra avalanche, and I love it. But the stacking of the Blu-rays isn't great. I mean, it's there's
I like my Blu-rays in their own individual pockets, daggone
when
it.
I was at Consarn Dag Nabbit when I was a youngin'. Uh, I haven't seen Blu-ray wrappings that bad since the Roosevelt administration. The first one.
I can't even follow up to that. But yeah, you can still I just want to make sure that because we're talking about this show and people are probably wondering, well, where the heck can I find it? And you can still get your own physical copy of Ultra Q from Amazon right now for $20.99 plus I would say plus probably a little bit of tax
Mm-hmm.
if you have Amazon Prime, or if you don't have Amazon Prime, just a little bit of shipping. Which I think this series is well worth it, honestly. I think when this series first came out, it was like I paid like $40 for it when it first came out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's good to see it's good to see what Mill Creek has done for us over the last couple of years. And let's see, I ordered this on November the 12th, 2019. So it's been over 2 years now.
Yes.
Um, since we got our hands on Ultra Q, and I'm so appreciative to what Mill Creek has done for the fans of the Ultra series and just fans of kaiju in general.
Oh
But
yeah.
anyway, I said all that. That was a really long-winded way of me saying that I'm going to give Ultra Q 5 out of 5 Godzuki.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
I said I wasn't going to do this. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just made
Oh,
myself cry.
it's lovely. It's lovely. I tell you,
Oh, it's great. It's lovely.
it's lovely.
Anyway,
Anyway, we got not stopping it now.
stopping it now. Okay, so that was our discussion on Ultra Q. I know we talked about this series in broad strokes. but I really just wanted to kind of cover it as a whole because it is a fascinating little series. Maybe Travis or I will go back and pick like individual episodes of Ultra Q to cover when we don't have any more material to cover on the podcast. But we have one more segment we have to get through before we can call this in the bag. And Danny, do you know what that segment is, sir?
Well, you said bag, so I guess the appropriate thing to do was to add the word mail to the beginning of that. Let's get to the mailbag.
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 What's in the mail today?
So this week's mailbag comes from our friend Nicholas Blackler. He sent us a direct message on Twitter. And his question is a really interesting one. I picked this one specifically because I knew you were going to be on, Danny. And because I know how much of a fan you are of Universal Monsters.
Ah, you know me well. You know me well.
So Nicholas or Nick asks us, since we have already had a giant Frankenstein, what other quote classic monster would you like to see have a growth spurt?
Oh, that's a good question. What's your pick, man?
Okay, so I really, really want to see that Godzilla versus the Wolfman.
I
Like,
know.
I really want to see that, like that come to fruition. Like, I really do.
He's working on it. Nakajima-san is working on it. I keep seeing little teeny tiny updates. Last I heard, it was supposed to be done in 2020, as in actual 2020, as in 2 years ago. I don't know. He might be working on it for 100 more years. Who knows? His grandchildren might be working on it. But I've seen probably 30 or 40 minutes of it over the years, just from going to conventions and seeing clips. And I've talked to Nakajima-san before. I actually have a signed poster of Wolfman versus Godzilla in my apartment from when I met him. I'm hoping he gets to see it. But is that your pick? Are you going to go with the Wolfman?
I'm gonna go with the Wolfman. I want to go with the Wolfman because honestly, we see a lot of reptilian monsters and we see a lot of robots. We don't see a lot of mammalian monsters in the Godzilla franchise. So that is my pick. I want to see. I want to see finally Godzilla versus the Wolfman.
I want to see it. That's a good choice. Oh man, for me, it's I don't know. There's so many good ones. I mean, I could say like Dracula or like the creature from the Black Lagoon, but in my brain, I always check those boxes off because there've been giant vampires, and obviously Ragon. We were just talking about Ragon. He counts as like a giant gill man. So I mean, I know there have been giant mummies, but a giant mummy would be really funny. Like a giant mummy, just
I think so.
throwing his bandages around. In terms of universal monsters, I'm going to avoid saying the Wolfman also, and I'm gonna go with the Mummy because having just a giant like corpse wrapped in bandages would be bizarre and surreal and kind of amazing. But I'm gonna that's answer A. Answer B, he says classic monster. So I'm gonna twist it around a little bit. And I'm gonna say 100% I want to see a giant Roman from Robot Monster attack a city. Now
Okay.
that might be redefining the word classic just a little. But I have for people who don't know this about me, I am obsessed with Robot Monster. It is one of my favorite films of all time. I love Roman. For anybody out there who might not know about this movie or what it is, ever so briefly, it's a pretty notorious Z movie from 1953 about an alien invasion, and the alien is a guy in a gorilla suit with a space helmet.
It's so absurd.
It's completely absurd. It's surreal almost. And he's got like an evil bubble machine, and he lives in a cave, and he uses dinosaur stock footage to kill everyone on the planet except for like half a dozen people. And they live like a foot away from him, but he can't find them. It's really stupid. This movie, it's kind of how Travis and Elijah love Yeti to an unhealthy degree. I love Roman. to, and I have cosplayed as Roman before. I built a costume for Roman. That's how obsessed I am. I love Roman. And the one flaw in that film, okay, there are a lot of flaws, but the one glaring flaw in that film is that there is no point where he grows 50 meters tall and destroys a city. I want to see giant Roman. Make it happen, world. I'll do it myself. I mean, the movie's technically public domain. I could do it.
You
I
could.
could do.
Now let me ask you, because I've seen clips, but I've never technically seen the full movie for Roman. Where can a person get their hands on on such a movie?
Well, there's a couple answers to that question. It's one of those weird movies that is technically public domain, but the rights to the full version have since been purchased by a gentleman who will now put copyright strikes on anybody who puts it on YouTube. But if you look on YouTube, you can find the movie on YouTube because it is public domain. It should be available for free. So type in Robot Monster 1953 full movie on YouTube. You'll find it. It won't be in good quality, but it is there. You can get it on DVD. The DVD is not in print anymore, but it was, I don't remember who released it, but there is a nice DVD out there from the Wade Williams archive of the film. It's also, I would be shocked if it hadn't been dumped onto Amazon Prime somewhere, because that's where, or Tubi, it's probably on Tubi. I understand Tubi has a lot of B movies on it, so it's probably there. Now, the other thing I'll say is that as of right now, there's actually a full Blu-ray restoration going on. Because I'm obsessed, I backed the Kickstarter last year, and their plan is because the movie was actually released in 3D back in the day. It was a 3D movie, and the 3D version has been lost forever. So the 3D archive folks who've been doing restorations on old 3D films have taken, they basically reassembled the film with the best camera negatives available, and they're going to release a nice cleaned up Blu-ray version of the film, and they're also going to put it out in 3D. And the Kickstarter campaign is over, but I think it'll be available for retail later. I'm not quite sure, but that will be out there. There will be a 3D Blu-ray of this movie with more money and time put into it than perhaps it deserves, including some of my money, because I'm a crazy person. But yes, if you just want to sit and watch it and have a good time, and no matter the quality, I think watching a movie like that in like really crappy, like grainy quality actually adds to the experience. So look it up on YouTube, or try to find it on Amazon Prime or Tubi. And I don't think it's ever been remade, so you won't run into any issues with like alternate versions. And the one version that's definitely readily available is the Mystery Science Theater version, which is a hoot. It is so funny.
It's not the same as GAPA, where there's like two different versions out there. There's the really nice version that just got re-released a couple of years ago, and then there's the really crappy version that's barely watchable.
Yeah, the one that's on all the 50 movie sets for $10 boxes. Yeah. The Monster from a Prehistoric Planet version.
Yeah, that one. And actually, I found it on Amazon Prime Video. You can rent it for a whopping $1.99.
Worth it.
Or you can own it, quote unquote. I should say, quote unquote, own it, because buying from Amazon Prime Video digitally is not actually owning something. I don't care what people say.
No, you're right.
You can buy it for $7.99. Would you still say that's worth it?
It's about a guy in a gorilla suit who uses stock footage of lizards to destroy the planet except for 3 people, and he also has a bubble machine. And am I not doing a good job of selling this movie and conveying?
Okay.
It's majestic. So it's amazing. It's worth it.
You're saying just go ahead,
do it,
and buy it for the $8.
Do it
so that you can watch it for as long as Amazon allows this to be up there.
Yes. If you don't care about quality, it's on YouTube. But if you want to own one of the greatest movies ever made, quote me right now, greatest movies ever made, it's worth the $8. Do it.
Okay. Well, there you go. Thank you, Nick, for that question. We really appreciate it. And if you want to be cool like Nick Blackler and send us a question that we will read out on a future episode of the podcast, you can do so by emailing us at kaijuweekly@gmail.com, or you can send us a DM on Twitter on Instagram, or you can message us directly on the Kaiju Groupie Facebook group. So, thank you, Danny, for coming on this episode. I don't have a trivia question to read out for the next episode because, to be quite honest with you, I don't know what I'm going to be doing for the next episode. We're trying to still figure out if Travis is going to be able to be with me next time around. So we'll get that figured out. It may be another episode of just me rambling by myself. Who knows? I don't know yet. But so I don't have a trivia question for this week, guys. Or at least for this episode. If we just when we decide what we're going to be covering next time around, I'll probably post that to our social media. So be on the lookout for that. And as always, you can send answers and we will read out literally any answer on the podcast, as you have seen and as you have heard on the podcast. That we'll just to the trivia question. Anyway, I'm talking in circles. So Danny, thank you for coming. Go ahead and give all of your shameless plugs because I hear it's one of your spiritual gifts.
You heard wrong. I'm good at rambling is what I'm good at doing.
Oh, that's somebody else. Everybody, sorry, I'm thinking of somebody else.
I know exactly who you're thinking of, actually. Don't tell them. But yes, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I am the creator of the Godzilla Novelization Project. If you want to follow me for some fun, family-friendly, wholesome, excruciatingly positive kaiju content, just me in general, or to follow along with the project, if you have a Twitter, check me out at danzilla93_GNP, and you can see the fun and or funny things I post there. The Godzilla Novelization Project is also on Facebook, so you can follow me there. If you have comments, questions, concerns, anything about the project, suggestions, reviews, anything like that you want to send me that is longer than what Twitter will allow, then you can email me at godzillanovelizationproject@gmail.com. I know that's really long, but gnp@gmail.com was taken, so I couldn't use it. But it's all there. Good Lord, what else can I tell you about myself? I guess definitely go check. What now?
You have a You have a podcast, don't you?
I do.
You started a podcast?
I do have a podcast for GNP patrons. If you really, really like what you read on the Godzilla Novelization Project, all the books and the short stories and the timelines and the blogs and all that stuff, and you'd like to help me make that project possible, then you can throw me some money on Patreon. The lowest tier is $1 a month, and for $1 a month, you get access to the GNP's Monster Musings podcast, which is a podcast hosted by three people, me, myself, and I. And I sit down and talk about updates to the project, random Godzilla topics, things like that, just for my readers club, my Patreon community. And that's been fun. I just put episode 20 up recently. It's crazy how fast that's been going because it's every week, and that's a perk you get as a patron for $1, and it goes up as high as $10. If you're feeling extra generous, that's there. No obligation or anything. You're under no obligation to back it at all. But if you like what I do and you want to support me and my lofty goals of being a professional writer and helping to get this project funded and help me get research material from Japan, which is expensive, Patreon goes a long way. So that's there, and there's a podcast as a perk. And yeah, that's about enough. I think that's about enough. I'm done.
Do you really think you have enough going on, Danny?
I mean, I could mention that I'm currently writing for Kaiju Ramen Magazine and Kaiju Ramen Media. That's also a thing I could mention.
That is also a thing. And for people who aren't familiar, Kaiju Ramen Media is our umbrella name for everything that we're trying to incorporate under the Kaiju Ramen branding, including this podcast. We're trying to start up our own, or we've been starting up our own Kaiju Ramen Media or Kaiju Ramen Media Podcast Network or something. We're still working on the title, so give us some slack. Which encompasses this show, Kaiju Weekly, my other show hosted by myself and our mutual friend Nathan Marchand called The Power Trip, A Journey Through the Power Rangers franchise, and another show that Travis and Nathan host called The Henshin Men podcast that explores the high-kicking and high-flying adventures of Japanese superheroes and all that stuff. So Again, Danny, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure as always. A lot of fun. We probably went a little bit too long, but that's okay. It was to be expected when you and I get behind the
This
mic.
is a recurring issue, yes, but
It
I
is.
like to think we talked about some fun stuff. And thank you again so much for inviting me on. And it was a real treat to get to talk about this show. I love this show to death, and it was a fun discussion. So thank you. I always love getting to come on the show.
Absolutely. And also a little bit of breaking news. I know we rarely get breaking news on this podcast as we're concluding. We have just crossed
What?
$9,000
What,
for the Kaiju Ramen Volume 1 Kickstarter. Yes,
dude?
I just got a text message from Travis as we're wrapping up here saying we just crossed 9,000. I just looked and we are at $9,010. So thank you so much for every man, woman, child, person, creature that has helped us reach another milestone for this magazine. It is you have no idea how much we appreciate it. I also want to conclude by saying thank you to everyone for listening and sharing this podcast with your friends. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at Kaiju Weekly. All the links to all of our social media, as well as the Kaiju Groupie Facebook group, are listed in the description of this episode. You can send questions, comments, or answers to trivia questions to our email, kaijuweekly@gmail.com. A big thank you to everyone who has supported Kaiju Ramen Magazine so far. If you want to find out more about that project and all the other things that we have going on, go visit kaijuRamenmedia.com and you'll probably get some nice little insider knowledge of what we've got cooking for upcoming projects associated with Kaiju Ramen. But there's one more thing you can also do to be awesome to this podcast, and this is by going over to Apple Podcasts and leaving us a 5-star review. And what that's going to do is that's going to put the show in front of other kaiju, tokusatsu, and ultra fans of no particular series whatsoever, just like you, just like Danny. It's going to help us grow. It's going to help this podcast and all of our other podcasts get more exposure so that we can reach more people and more fans and talk to and do more things with Kaiju Ramen Media. So, to round out that episode, the very last thing we have to say is to help control the giant monster population, have your Gomez spayed or neutered?
Your Gomez's? You're
Gomez's?
going no, nope. Wait, no.
Your Goness.
No,
Oh, I
no,
saw where you're.
no.
Oh, no, no,
We're done.
no, no. Yeah, we're totally done. Bye, guys.